Everyone, I'm going to be going over how to work with images and links on a web page, specifically using HTML. So this is the images and links page on the website. I'm going to start with images, and you'll see that the image element looks a little different than the elements that we've looked at so far. The image element has a single tag that contains all the information for the image, but it doesn't have a separate closing tag. We just have one single tag, not an open and a close. Now, the image element also has a lot of additional information, and so you'll see lots of what we call attributes. So SRC is the source. This is where the image is located in comparison to the current web page. Alt, this is short for alternate, and this is the text that displays when the image is missing. Title is what displays when you hover over the image with the tooltip, and that's also what screen readers will read, so the title right here. And style is actually for adding CSS, and this is how we add the size of the image. So you can see style equals, and then inside of quotes we have the width, colon, some number of pixels, semicolon to end the width, height, colon, some number of pixels, semicolon to end the height, and then the closing quote. So you always want to make sure that you include all four of these attributes whenever you're working with images. Now, something I do want to mention about the source. So again, this is where you find the image in relation to the current page that's open in the browser. So we have two types of what we call paths. We have relative paths, and this is like giving directions by saying, hey, go down the next street, 2 streets down, turn right. You can get there, but you're not giving specifics. So you might just have literally the name of the page or the name of the image, and that means that it's at the same level, it's in the same parent folder. If you have ... / and then the name of the image or the name of the page, this means that the image is located one folder back. So one level back. And if you have ... / and then the name of the page or the image, it means that this is located 2 levels back. So relative paths. Now, absolute paths are absolute. So you are giving very specific directions. You're going to turn right on Main Street, and then you're going to take a left on Maple Ave, and whatever it happens to be. You are giving very specific directions. So that might be the full URL, like https : www, whatever the domain is. It might be folder 1, whatever the image folder is, the name of the image. So absolute and relative. I recommend keeping things relative on your own website whenever possible, so that if things move around, it handles it better. But if you're linking off of your website, you always want to use an absolute path. Last thing to mention here is we have placeholder links, and so that is just a hashtag when you don't know what the link is going to be, and all it does is causes the page to reload, which we can see when we actually get to working with the links. But right now, just the image element. So head over to the Try It Yourself editor. Now, you may notice that there is a really long comment here, and I don't think I've mentioned the comments before specifically, but in HTML, you can write a comment by having a left angle bracket, exclamation point, dash, dash to open. Whatever text is inside is not going to display, and then just a dash, dash, right angle bracket to close. And so you can see that there's some information here for you. There's an images folder that's at the same level of this particular page, and inside of that there are 3 images that we can use: sprite.gif, window.png, or marker.png. So after the comment, we're going to add an image. So left angle bracket, img for the image element. We need to have the source, so src equals, and inside of quotes, we're going to have the path. So in this case, I'm going to use, I think, the marker image first. I'm just going to copy that path and paste it inside of my quotes here. I need to make sure I have a title attribute, and again, this is for screen readers or for the tooltip. Something that's descriptive is usually a good idea. Alt, again, alternate text if the image is missing. It might just be an error message, it might be descriptive. And then we have the style attribute. So style equals, and inside of quotes, I can add the width and the height, or even just one of those, and it'll automatically choose the other by matching the aspect ratio. So in this case, I am just going to be doing the width because the height will automatically set to whatever I want it to be. Now, this is an image that's intended to be used for a marker on a list, so it's actually very small. I'm going to go with 50 pixels for the width, semicolon at the end, and it's going to be a little pixelated because it's larger than the image itself, but that'll let us see it really clearly and that it's working. Now, when I'm closing the image element, I can do this two ways. I can just do the right angle bracket like this, or I can add a / in front of it. It will work both ways, doesn't really matter which one you go with. And when I submit, you can see the image here. And this is a square image, so the size, as far as the aspect ratio goes, is perfectly correct. I can play around with the actual width to control how small that is actually going to display. You can see that it's actually intended to be fairly small. When I hover, you can see the tooltip, so that's all working properly. If I add a typo into my path, you can see that the image doesn't actually display. Depending on the browser that you're using, it should show the message from Alt, but some browsers might not do that properly. So that is an image element. You can use any of these three paths for the image source. Just make sure that you use one of them and write it exactly the same. Next up, we have links. So these look much more similar to the elements we've been using previously. So we have an opening tag, A, which stands for anchor. I don't know why they use the term anchor instead of link, but they do. So A for anchor. In the opening tag, we also have href, which is hyperreference. So this is where the actual link is located. Again, we might be using the relative or absolute path, depending on where we're trying to go to. Then in between the opening and closing tag, we have whatever text is actually going to display for the link. And then we have the closing tag, end of A. Sometimes you also add a target attribute, and if you set the target to _blank, it's just going to open the page in a new tab. That is a good thing to do if you are making a link that's going off of your website, because you want to keep people on your website as long as possible. And if they're leaving and going somewhere else, it's better to keep your website open at the same time. All right, so let's add a link. I'm going to add it right underneath my image here. So left angle bracket A. This is going to be href equals, and then inside of quotes, whatever the path is going to be. If I don't know where I want it to go, again, I can just use a hashtag as a placeholder link, or I could just write out a URL going somewhere like to Google. I'm just going to do the placeholder. And that is it for the opening tag. Then whatever my text is going to be, and then the closing tag, like that. Now, the image and the link are different than the elements that we've seen so far because they don't automatically go onto their own lines. They have an inline display instead of display block, which puts things onto their own lines. So these display a little bit differently. If I want to prevent that and make sure that they do go onto their own lines, I can always add a line break in between. So for line break, it's left angle bracket, BR, and you can just write it like this, or like the image, you can write it like this, and that will force the link down onto its own line. Personal preference as far as that goes. Now, the link should just reload the page. You can see that the color changes because it's been loaded. Because of how the iframe works, it has some sandboxing that's sort of protective. You might not actually see the page that you were trying to load here, and that's not surprising. And you can always just submit again. If things stop updating after you've clicked on a link, not a big deal. Just come down to where your code is, Command A to select all, Command C to copy, Command R to reload the page, and then Command A to select all, Command V to paste, and when you submit, it'll go back to normal. So that is just something that you might need to do depending on what's going on. All right, so we have a link that's working. I do want to mention, if you wanted this to go open another tab, which again might not work in the iframe, but in general, we can just add target equals underscore blank. This would make sure that the page opens in another tab instead of the current one. All right, now fun thing, you can actually combine the image element and the link element so that an image can act as a link. And the way that you do this is you just literally, instead of having text in the middle of the link, you just place an actual image inside of that. So that is what we are going to do next. So I am going to copy my link and just use the same one here. And I'm going to add another line break in between to put this down below. That's completely optional. And instead of the link here, I have my opening tag and my closing tag. I'm going to add my image. So this time I'm going to use maybe the sprite image as my source, so as my path. So again, there's an images folder at the same level as this particular page, so I can find my sprite image inside of that. I want to make sure I have alt so that there's an error message. And then next up, I need to have a title for screen readers and for the tooltip. And I don't want to forget to include the style so that I'm giving this a width. Again, you could do either the width and the height, or you can do both if you know them. Now, for this particular image, I think it's 150 pixels wide. So I'll do that for my size, and there we go. So now when I hover over the image, you can see that the cursor changes. Actually, I'm going to change this image out to window.png because I'm going to use the sprite image for something else. I think that this one is 200 pixels wide. There we go. So again, whole thing acts as a link. That can be really helpful when you're linking to a product sometimes. All right, last up we have image mapping, and this is pretty cool. With image mapping, you can add a link just to the parts of the image where you want it. So let's say you have a client and they have a photo with 3 different products. You can make each product in the photo its own link. So I haven't added anything to the heart here. Using circles or ellipses or anything that's rectangular or square, it's going to be a lot easier to create an accurate link shape for. While you can do it for more complex shapes, it requires just a lot of math. So it is much easier just sticking with the basic shapes. Now, for the image itself, we add a new attribute called useMap. And so it just has a hashtag and then some sort of name. So I'm going to come back over here, but I'm just going to add another image to use useMap with. I am actually just going to copy the one that I already have here. And I'm going to use my sprite.gif image. So again, anytime I have an image, I want to make sure I have a path. I want the alt message in case the image doesn't display. And I want the title and whatever the size is going to be. In this case, 150 pixels. And my last attribute is this new one called useMap. So useMap equals, inside of quotes, I need a hashtag, and then whatever the name of the map is going to be. I'm just going to call it map. You can call it whatever. But again, it just needs a hashtag or the pound sign in front of the name. Now, if we take a look back at the page itself, you can see there is a map area that gets added, and the map can have as many different areas inside of that as you want. We'll just start with the map, and whatever the name is for the name attribute, it's going to be the same as the use map, just without the hashtag. So I'm going to, after my image, add the map element. I always, again, like to have the open and the close done at the same time so I don't forget. Inside the opening tag for map, I'm adding a name, and that equals, in this case, just map. It is exactly the same as the name over here. Now, if I submit at this point, there's nothing actually visually different about my image here. It's behaving just like it should, but there's no actual link yet. And that is where the different areas come in. Now, there are a few different types of shapes that we can have for an area. I do want to mention that area is a single tag, not an opening and a close, more like an image. All right, so inside the map, we can have as many areas as we want, and the area determines where the link is actually going to go in terms of the location on the image and in terms of where it's actually linking to. So the most common shapes are a circle and a rectangle. There are some more complicated things you can do for a shape, but it's not something we're going to cover. Just know that there are more complicated shapes that you can do so that you could actually end up with a link that fits a more complicated shape as well. But for the most part, circles and rectangles will do what you need. So after the shape, we have our coordinates, and so this is controlling where the link actually ends up, and then href, just like a normal link, and I'm just using a hashtag for a placeholder. Now, a circle only has 3 coordinates. The first coordinate is where horizontally, the horizontal position, the second, the vertical position, and then the third is the radius. So inside my map, I'm just going to indent over a little bit and add my area. It is a single tag, just like the image. I can have it just like this, or I might have the / at the end here. I want to make sure I have a shape. I'm going to be starting with a circle. Notice circle is written out all the way. The next attribute is the coordinates, so COORDS equals inside of quotes. My first coordinate is the horizontal location. I usually start with 0, and the vertical location also 0, and then the last number is the radius. I'm going to start with 20, and we're going to see what happens. Now, and actually, I want to make sure I actually add the link. So href equals, and inside of quotes, this is just going to be that placeholder link. All right, so now when I'm hovering over this top left corner, which is 0, 0, we can see the links there, and just in that corner. So horizontally, I'm going to try moving this over to 20. And if you are more of a math person than I am, you might be able to figure out this math a little bit easier. I always just do trial and error. So it looks like 24 or 25 is probably about right for the horizontal location. I'm going to try 20 for the vertical location and see how that goes. And that is very close. So maybe just a little bit further down, maybe 22. Let's see how that is. Yeah, that is looking pretty good. So I can keep working with the numbers there, but that is actually looking pretty accurate. So I will leave that as is. Now, a rectangle is a little bit more complicated. Notice that rectangle is abbreviated to rect, so RCT, and we have 4 coordinates. The first coordinate is along the x-axis on the top left. The second coordinate is the y-axis on the top left. Then our third coordinate is the x-axis on the bottom right. and our fourth coordinate is the y-axis on the bottom right. So we start 2 coordinates for the top left, then 2 coordinates for the bottom right. And we're always starting horizontal, then vertical. All right, so I'm just going to indent the same level, adding my new area. My shape is a rectangle. This time I'll be having 4 coordinates. Now, again, I often like to start with 0, 0, just because I know where that is located. And I'm just going to choose some random numbers for now and see how that goes. I need my hyperreference, so a href. I'm still just going to do a placeholder link, so the pound sign or hashtag. And again, I can close this with or without that /, totally a matter of personal preference. So now I can see that the first 0, 0 is getting this top left corner over here, and the link comes all the way over here. So now I need to just keep adjusting. So I know that this first number is the horizontal value. So this is 150 pixels. I'm going to try 50 for that horizontal location. And actually that looks just about right. A little bit high. So I'm going to try 10 for that vertical location for my first coordinate. Now 10 might be a little bit too low, so I can keep experimenting with this number, like maybe I want 8. And it looks like that is really close. Maybe it's going to be 7, maybe it's going to be 6, but something around there is pretty close. And it's ending really close to where I want it to, so I think my horizontal position is good. It's just that the vertical position needs to be a little bit lower. So I'm going to try 40, and that's pretty close there. Looking pretty good. So I can keep adjusting those numbers a little bit, but that is how it works. So again, this first number is the horizontal position in the top left. The second number is the vertical position in the top left. Our third number is the horizontal position in the bottom right. And our last number is the vertical position in the bottom right. And that is how you do image mapping.